what happens is most of us have this stuff, this voice in our head. Everyone does, whether they say you do or don't. Like there's some sort of voice or narrative going on in there that more often than not is saying things to you that you would never say to a friend or another human. And yet we allow that to repeat over and over again in our heads. You're not good enough. You shouldn't be here. You're a piece of shit. Whatever it is comes up a lot. And we let that happen. And the way that neuroplasticity works is what happens in the brain, what repeats itself is going to fire and wire together more easily and more effectively. And so the more that we have that negative head trash going on, and I'm not going to say it's not going to be there. I still have a ton of it.
Oh, yeah.
But you start to bring awareness to it and you say, oh, one, that's just a thought. That's not a fact. Two, what else could I see or look at this from an outside perspective that may have a little different frame on?
We are the Keyboard Samurai, a podcast about the business of cyber and tech, here to help you or your business improve. Here's your host, Wil Klu. Let's hack into it now. Hey, everybody, welcome back. Always like, subscribe, all that good stuff. I'm excited today because I get to talk about something that, I do all the time. We're going to talk about sales stuff for all y'all to help out. So today with Jordan. Jordan, why don't you give us the 30 seconds of who you are and why we care?
Yeah, my name's Jordan Benjamin. I live up in the mountains of Vail, Colorado, and have spent my entire career in sales and startups, anywhere from 30 employees to 600 to 6,000. Pre-IPO, post-IPO, have failed a bunch of times, and have also done a lot of work helping people improve and manage their mental game so they can build their own personal operating system to run more effectively, crush bigger goals, and do it all without burning out.
I love it. I love it. I love Vail too. I have yet to snowboard out on the West Coast yet. I need to do that.
Well, this is not the season to do it, so it's a good one to avoid it.
Yeah, there's still snow in my yard here on the East Coast, but it's not snow worthy or snowboard worthy. I love the startup thing. So let's go right into that. If I'm thinking about and I've worked in enterprise startup, I work with startups, I worked in mid-market, I worked in kind of all around as well. So pretty diverse experience you do. But I am curious as to what is different with sales and a startup versus like an established company.
Yeah, so the startups I was at, a lot of the times we had to rely on who our investors were to build any credibility, to build any name brand recognition, to have anybody even think about taking a call with us. And so that was one of those things for me in these early stage startups where we really had to work on messaging. We had to hook attention really quickly, and we had to figure out the value that we delivered, even though it wasn't really nailed down yet. We had the pitch, we had the thought of what we were doing, but we didn't have hundreds of case studies. We didn't have raving fans. We didn't have a moat around the business. And so we really had to think about what was that key value. And a lot of times we leaned on, well, Google Ventures invested in us. Bessemer, we had all these investors that have credibility that folks might know to build a little bit of recognition. Whereas when I joined HubSpot, we were about 600 people. And I still remember one of my first sales calls there, somebody says, oh, HubSpot, like, why are you calling me? And that's still when, most people didn't know about us. But we had mastered this art of inbound marketing. We had added a lot of value into people's lives that then when we'd pick up the phone, they didn't even think about us as like a CRM or a marketing automation company. They thought about us as a company that had given them blog posts and contents to add value into their life that really opened the conversation a lot easier for us to actually have some trust built when they heard us on the phone or send an email their way.
Okay, so I have to dig in that because when I'm advising startups, that's the hardest thing to do is like, and I always tell all the founders I work with, like, go build your brand. Like you need to use your personal brand. You need to provide, I always talk about educate, engage, convert, all of that good stuff. So what is it that either HubSpot did or that has to be done? Like how do you build that inbound credibility as quickly as possible?
Yeah, so the playbook has really changed as we've moved towards like AEO, AI, engine optimization, and SEO has really kind of shifted. But that's what HubSpot did early on, was this version of SEO where it was like, great, go write posts, write content that answers the questions that your prospects might be asking. So that started that piece really easily. Now, optimize that for agents a little bit more. But the other thing that HubSpot did really well, even when there was only a small number of customers, is one of their key principles, one of their key operating principles was customer delight. How do you really go above and beyond to delight your customers? And, I actually read an interview from our CEO, former CEO, Brian Halligan, that he was on recently, and they talked about how initially they spent a lot of time focusing on delighting the employees, which they did. They had one of the best companies to work for, rated multiple times, multiple years. But they made a switch to say, how do we really focus on making sure our customers are totally delighted? Because really, when you delight both your employees and your customers, that's what starts to build that engine and that flywheel that gets more customers talking about you to other people. And it's also what gets your employees being excited to work there, to recruit more folks onto the team. And so focusing on how do you delight your team, how do you delight your customers is one of those things that really helped open the door for that flywheel to start spinning a lot faster.
Interesting. Yeah, the is it Richard Branson famously like take care of your employees and they'll take care of your clients kind of thing.
Happy employees make happy customers.
Yeah. Well, so is that still the model? Because I think that's still a good idea. Like if you do a blog post with a piece of, again, I always advise probably similar to what you said, right? Take the 5 questions you get asked in every first meeting, take all the objections to why nobody will buy anything, and then just create content around that. And then if you put it in blogs, then it's in the web. And if you do social media posts wherever your ICP is, then it's in there. I had a guy on the other day about the interesting thing with like AEO is, so like in security, everybody, especially in the services industry, everybody sounds the same, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody wants to, you either sound like Accenture and Deloitte, or you sound like, a small, we're here, but you don't actually differentiate, you don't niche. And so the AI has no way of telling either of you apart, and it has no way to recommend you. I don't know if you see, I don't know where I was going with all that. I was like, I think that's still a good approach, like as far as that content for the search side. Is that how you would do it?
It definitely is. There's more kind of nuance now around how do you optimize that content to be read by those, AI engines, LLMs, like how do you put FAQs together and those other things. But the thing that also makes that content really helpful from a sales standpoint is now all of a sudden you have something valuable to send out on your email or on a LinkedIn or a post to share. And so that's, again, where a lot of folks maybe, they didn't take my cold call, but I was able to reference, hey, I'm going to send you a blog post about how to update your website to drive more effective conversions. Or here's how to talk about sales tools that are going to help your team be more effective with the time that they spend. And so that's really, again, where so much of, especially on an outbound strategy, especially in a startup where you don't have a strong inbound engine, is where you've got to have this multi-thronged approach where you're reaching out to folks across different channels and having content to reach out with beyond just, hey, do you want to book a meeting with me over email, starts to become so much more effective when you're like, hey, I'm going to send you this thing over email, check it out. Here's a blog post to take a look at about the keys around security and, what's changing in 2026 or 27, or, how's AI impacting security and what do you need to do about it? Now, all of a sudden you're adding value into people's lives opposed to just saying, hey, do you want to buy my crap?
Right. Yeah. And there's so much of I'm curious as to your thoughts on, because we talked before about like how everybody's kind of the same. And I think there are better products and better services for specific people. Everybody has different needs. It's the whole, not everybody needs a Porsche, but we'd all like one kind of thing, right?
Yep.
But I guess when every car will take you to the grocery store and get gas get your groceries just as easily as anybody else. Like, how do you different? Like, what are some of those? Is it just relationship at the end of the day for a salesperson?
I don't think so. There's so much to it, but a lot of things do, especially as we all get AI driven, I see more and more of us moving towards this kind of homogenous look and feel where everything does start to sound and feel the same, where, what was amazing and outstanding even 6 or 12 months ago is now being upended. You look at the Fortune 500 and so many new entrants have come in over the last 20 years, where for a long time it was very set. And so to me, I think a lot of it comes down to that culture that you build internally, that ethos around, how does your support team show up when there is an issue? How do you be able to lean on, this thought of one that we use in HubSpot a lot was like, never waste a good crisis. It's like, oh, when a crisis comes up, like it gives you a chance to reflect and think about how do you improve? How do you get better? Having a company that has this culture internally of taking full accountability and ownership are these things where a lot of times that's what's going to drive the trust and credibility, because at the end of the day, trust is really what our currency is in today's day and age. And so, yes, part of that drives a relationship, but a lot of times people want to buy from people they do like, even though they say like, oh, that doesn't really matter. You want to. And so how do you build that trust? How do you add value before you ever try and extract it? Are some of those things that I think really build the trust in the relationship, but also ultimately show that you're delivering something that has a ton of value behind it as well.
Right. Yeah, I just think about all the startups that have to like get those first few clients and how hard that is for them. I mean,
it's so tough. And there's something that I talk with a lot of folks at startups about. I've got a lot of clients, a lot of folks that I've worked with since I've spent time in startups that, for me, it's about belief, and not necessarily belief that you have the best product on the planet. In startups, you're probably not going to. You've got a good direction, you've got a good idea, you've got a good thing you're working towards. But if you can't believe in that vision, that future destination, your product's never going to be able to get better if you don't sell it. And so that's where I talk to a lot of sellers, especially at earlier stage companies, where it's like, you have to sell this product in order to get enough feedback on what does the market really need? What does it take to make this thing better and improve upon it? And so that's one of those things that can be really hard when I talk to folks that say, oh, my product's a nice to have, it's not a need to have. Or, oh, you know what, I just hear so many customer complaints. And to a point, like, if those aren't getting actioned on, if those aren't getting worked on, then yeah, maybe you should be doing something else. But if you see the leadership team saying, hey, we need to take these complaints, we need to listen to customer feedback and improve based upon that, now all of a sudden you're seeing that, okay, I can have belief that every sale I make is going to help us improve our product and help us move the company forward more effectively.
Yeah, that's you have to be able to sell the vision. That's something that like I learned early on as whether it was startup or a new service offering or a new technology offering that we would have, like and when I would hire consultants for pre-sales roles, I'm like, look, I expect you to impact day one because security already. Like you can go talk to this CISO or the CIO, figure out what their problem is, help them create a solution, and then come back, and then we'll figure out on the delivery end where the parts and all stuff come from. Like, it doesn't matter, right? All you have to do is go out and learn their business and help them solve their problems, right? So that's the whole idea of like that's where I take all that whole idea of like sell the vision. Like, okay, I know what you need, and here's how that would be done. So cool, right? And yeah, I'm with you on the MVP to get the product into the client's hands, because they're going to change it. They always do.
That's the hope. And if not, then maybe that's where you get out and I think that's one of the hard things for companies with solely technical founders is a lot of times they think that they've built this beautiful baby and like it's perfect in every single way. And I think that was something that became really impactful when you have a leadership team that's got this blend of understanding sales and marketing and GTM, and having some leadership around the technical side of things as well, is where there can be a really good interplay to say, okay, here's what we actually need to do to grow effectively, and take that feedback to make sure that, yes, this tech is beautiful and amazing that you built. I couldn't do it myself at all. Even with, ChatGPT and Claude and things of the sort that can be really helpful these days, I still couldn't touch that. And so there is this element of like, yes, what you've got is beautiful, and now let's make it even better based upon what we're hearing from the market or where we need to take things to really scale to that next level.
Yeah, that's a good point. The that code is not your baby. Be ready to throw it. Like, that's the thing. I was like, don't get married to it. You're gonna be able to throw it. It's gonna change. It's fine.
Yep.
What kind of like do you have like specific systems or processes? Like, what kind of things do you, because this is the other thing too, right? Having worked in like very mature sales organization, very immature, and having built like, the whole sales playbook and go to market strategy before, right? Like, that's a lot of work. And I show the firms I work with, I'm like, here's what a whole GTM strategy looks like, just so you know, like, we're not going to do all of that because we got to do blah, blah, blah. So like, I'm curious from the sales side specifically, especially getting those first few customers, like what kind of systems do you believe in?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it's a lot about, I was initially trained on like Bant
Mm-hmm.
selling and Sandler and some of those things. But really, what I've found to be so much more effective is moving your sales process away from being about you and what you want. What's your budget? Are you the one that can buy? Like,
Yeah.
what are your needs? When can you buy? And like that whole Bant framework, I just found to be so self-centered.
Selfish.
And to me, where sales can be such an incredible profession, where it can create so much freedom for you, where you can actually see that you're making an impact, is when you focus on your prospect and your customer. And so to me, what I love talking about is like, okay, what are your goals? What are you looking to accomplish? Where do you want to take things? What are your plans, or what are you doing today? Where do things stand for you? So goals, plans, and then challenges. Like, what's preventing you? What have you tried before
Mm-hmm.
that's getting in the way of you getting to that goal that you've probably already tried to get to in some other way? And then, yeah, timeline, like, when do you want to get to this goal? And that really helps us create this value to understand where they want to be, where they're at right now. And that kind of space in between is what gives us the ability to drive value. So to me, that's where I try and move away and work with folks to say, how do we move away from our sales process being about me and what I want and what I care about, to really being focused on the prospect? And then the other thing that I've really been hammering home with a lot of clients and folks lately is, how do we speak at the level of like a fourth grader? Maybe in security, y'all get a little bit more advanced.
Great.
Some of
You got to understand it quickly.
but this is where so many people get lost in using industry jargon and buzzwords. And it's like, you'll see it even after someone's been at a company for 3 or 4 months, they start speaking a totally different language that means a lot to them. But again, they forget to put themselves in the shoes of the customer. And so to me, that's really where being customer centric about how you sell is
Mm-hmm.
really a critical thing that a lot of folks miss. And especially miss that when they don't have a lot of confidence in what they're bringing to the table. So they feel they've got to feature dump. They feel they've got to sell hard. Really, a lot of times questions and intelligent questions are shown that you know and understand the market and your persona, what they care about, what they struggle with, is what adds so much more value to that conversation and builds a lot of trust.
Yeah, I always advise, like, yeah, go talk to them about their business, learn about, like, just be curious, and then you'll have conversations, and then you'll be solving, then you're not selling, you're just solving problems. The
Curiosity is the superpower of any good seller, leader, and I think human in general too.
Right. I will say though, as you're saying that, I'm curious, because like, if I look at, an organization selling a lot of different things, they got different, technology and services. But if you're in that startup world and you have like a niche product, like, how do you have that conversation if you're just worried about like this one little, like, do you have to go and have that conversations, maybe not with the buyer or the purse string holder, but maybe the IC? Like, how does that work better?
Yeah, talking to that lower level influencer or person within a deal or a company can give you so much insight about what are those bigger struggles, because the people below the line, the manager, the individual contributor, they're the ones that are usually going to be the most impacted by the new technology or new product or whatever it is that you bring into the company, where the leadership team is much more worried about, how does this impact gross margin? How does this impact profitability? How does this impact our overall budget for the year, getting towards our 5-year vision and our goals
Mm-hmm.
there? And so I'm a big fan, especially when you're going into larger accounts or larger companies. Think about how can you multi-thread into some of these different parts of the organization to do some additional due diligence. A lot of folks think that like only scheduling the meeting or closing the deal is success in sales. And one, that's something that we don't really have much control over, whether somebody says, yes, I'm going to book the meeting, or yes, I'm going to sign the contract. But how can we start thinking about, what, I got a much deeper picture of what this organization cares about, or what the sentiment is across their frontline team and where they're struggling. And so to me, that can be a massive win as you think about, especially breaking into larger accounts. But I saw a stat today that said on contracts over 250K, you were much more likely to win it when you had 17 people involved in the buying process versus ones that were most likely to lose only had about 7 people involved. And so this buying process is involving so many people these days, because nobody wants to be the one person that
Yeah.
says, oh, I hung my hat out there for this thing and it didn't work and now I lose my job. And so this is where that multi-threading concept, especially in bigger deals, is where you've got to think about how do you learn, how do you level up from talking to multiple different people in the organization, even though they might not be the one with the purchasing power or the authority to sign off. They are people that can hopefully give you some insight as to what's really going to be impactful to really move that deal forward, or what are those big company objectives and priorities.
Yeah, that makes sense, because they're going to know what the tool, technology, service is going to provide value for them. And they can help you understand how to translate that upward to the people who are going to actually sign the check, who, like you said, are worried about revenue, ROI, and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
And that conversation is going to be better. And you'll probably qualify out faster too, because, and that lets you go have how do I help? What are your KPIs, MBO? Like, what do you need to do? How can my solution help you with that? And then when you get to whoever it is that's signing the check, now you can ask do you have budget? When's your time? Like all the selfish questions, because they will have already kind of looked at things there. So that's an interesting approach to it, I think.
Totally.
It's tough, man. I just look at it all, like just trying to sell like this one really niche thing to like this certain market of people. And it's like, man, just to get into those people's heads and get their time away, it's a lot of work. And so 17 people involved in the deal, which to me is, oh God, that sounds terrible.
Right. I agree.
But I mean, we go back, years ago, probably it's probably not decades ago, but years ago, from a marketing perspective, it was like 7 or 12 touch points you had to have before somebody was going to like have a conversation with you. And now it's like 20 something, almost 30.
20 something, 5, 10, 15 people, and that's where a lot of deals go to die, with just status quo. People are like, I'm comfortable with where things are, because that's really where the brain keeps us safe. And doing something new is unpredictable, it's uncomfortable. And so that's why a lot of folks just don't move forward. And you don't have those, 20 touch points across 10 different people. And so that trust isn't very high. And so it really takes a lot to get folks bought in to make a change, unless there's a lot of pain or a lot of struggle there. And so to me, that's really where sales is tough. It's not an easy profession, not an easy thing to do. But that's also why the rewards can be totally massive.
Yeah, big upside. So on that point, because that transitions well into the next part, which is like, so you have like systems for, like we talked earlier before the show, like how salespeople can keep their sanity is what I'll shorten it up to. But like, tell me a little bit, like help all the struggling founders and salespeople out there listening, like who want to pull their hair out every day. Like, so what's this about?
Yeah. So, for me, what I just realized is a lot of the stuff that I learned in school didn't really help me build an outstanding life or a great life, especially in sales. School was built to kind of solve for the average, solve for the median, keep everybody, ready to be able to go work on a factory floor. And yet so many workers in our space here are knowledge workers. They leverage their brain to get asymmetric rewards in life. But that means, especially in something like sales, you're probably going to fail more often than you succeed. I played baseball growing up. And so, if I fail 70% of the time, that still means I'm batting 300.
Which great.
Can get you in the Hall of Fame, in that profession. And so I think baseball was really helpful for me to realize, like, hey, every at bat is a new at bat. Every pitch is a new pitch that I've got to be able to stand up there for. And I can't show up like crap. And if I show up and it's like, I'm not going to get a hit, I'm going to slump or whatever it is, you're really going to struggle. And that's happened to me a lot in sales. And so what I realized is, how do we start building these different tools or frameworks to help us bounce back? I talked to a client the other week who, multiple time President's Club winner, has been great in sales, but was telling me, like, I just can't catch a win. I'm not winning anywhere. Everything's falling apart in my whole life right now. And so I talked with her about, how do we build a brag book? Or what another friend called a shameless self-promotion folder, where it's like, how do you, have screenshots? How do you have pictures or little reminders when the CEO called you out for closing like the biggest deal in company history, or when a prospect reached out to you and said, like, that was one of the best sales processes I've ever been through. Could I hire you? Or when you see yourself at the top of the stack rank of everybody out there, because the brain is defaulted to fear and scarcity. And so the more that we can have little systems, habits, or routines that give us the dopamine hit, that give us that reminder of, oh, I've done this before, I can be successful, is a really helpful way to remind yourself when that negative head trash comes up, which is going to happen. How do we help bring those little reminders to say, like, wait, no, I can do this. I have done this before. And so to me, this is one of those super simple little tricks that we can do. I also love to celebrate myself along the
Mhm.
way. And so every day I go and fill out, something in a journal or have my clients fill out a form. It's like, what are 3 things you can be proud of from today? And it doesn't have to be, I closed the biggest deal in my history ever. It may be, what? I went for a workout today and I didn't want to, or I ate a healthy
Yeah.
meal, or I had a nice talk with my wife, or I, picked up the phone and made 10 dials even though I didn't want to. And so when we can find these little wins, most of us, again, the default programming that most of us have is we end the day and it's like, oh my gosh, there's so much more I could have got done. And sales, there's always more you can do. When you're building
Mhm.
a company, there's always more that could be done. And so if you end every day with, oh, I didn't accomplish nearly anything I wanted to, it becomes really bad for the brain because your brain believes what you repeat to it time and time again. So
Uh,
every day and every week we go to, great, what are a couple things that went well that you can be proud of, that you can celebrate? And then what's my one thing that I want to focus on for that next day? How do I actually win the next day? By planning for it the day in advance. Because if you wake up for the next day or the next week and you have no idea what you're going to do, now all of a sudden you're dragging mental brain power from typically when you're most productive in the day away, and you're playing more defense, you're living more reactively. So we start working to say, how do we be strategic about what we're going to then do tactically and pulse between that? Great, I'm going to go to some high level strategic thinking, leverage this incredible intelligence we have as a human to then get into the tactical work, go dive deep and do it. So those are a couple different plays that we run to help start building the system to be more productive, more effective, and not burn out with all this negative head trash just eating us up all the time.
that's great. Yeah, man, that's tough. I struggle with that too myself. Like you said, you have to celebrate the wins, and we're all really bad at well, I say we all. I know I'm really bad at taking my own advice. Like, you know what I mean?
Of
Like,
course,
I'll
of
tell people
course.
don't work more than you have to, and then I'll work forever and make sure you settle the wins. It's like, nope, that one's done. I gotta go find the next one. But yeah, so it's interesting, that whole, I don't want to say like vision boarding, but that whole idea of um, you know, uh visualizing things and like affirming affirmations and things like that to yourself seems to really work. I know there was like a study done for like free throws in basketball where they had people actually practice them, and then people who just thought about it, and then people who thought about it improved pretty significantly too, I think. So yeah, there's a lot of that. Getting at, I get the head trash. That's a great
Yeah.
saying.
And it's wild. There's so much neuroscience coming up to back up a lot of these like woo things
Yeah.
now that's showing like, oh, that same part of the brain is firing off when you visualize it. You see the Olympic athletes visualizing their ski race beforehand. You see the gymnasts doing that. And you see, I've seen videos of like Blue Angel fighter pilots
Mm.
practicing this stuff as well, because you'll see now in the brain when you look at an fMRI study that the similar parts of the brain are still firing off. It may not be 100% the same like they talked about in the past, but all of a sudden you can be sitting there visualizing that free throw going in, and your brain is going to have those same things go off. But
Mhm.
what happens is most of us have this stuff, this voice in our head. Everyone does, whether they say you do or don't. Like there's some sort of voice or narrative going on in there that more often than not is saying things to you that you would never say to a friend or another human. And yet we allow that to repeat over and over again in our heads. You're not good enough. You shouldn't be here. You're a piece of
Ugh.
shit. Whatever it is comes up a lot. And we let that happen. And the way that neuroplasticity works is what happens in the brain, what repeats itself is going to fire and wire together more easily and more effectively. And so
Nice.
the more that we have that negative head trash going on, and I'm not going to say it's not going to be there. I still have a ton of it,
Oh yeah.
but you start to bring awareness to it and you say, oh, one, that's just a thought. That's not a fact. Two, what else could I see or look at this from an outside perspective that may have a little different frame on it of, oh yeah, you know what? My job sucks right now. I really hate my job and what I'm doing right now. But wow, like 10 years ago, I would kill for these problems. I would
Hmm.
die to have these problems that I have now. But we tend to forget about that time 10 years ago because we are always in the present. chasing that next big thing because we keep raising the bar higher and higher, that all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, I'll finally be happy. I'll finally be content when something else happens. And yet we never actually get there because we just keep raising the bar and pushing it up further.
The whole click thing. Yeah, that's fun. Well, it's interesting because I had not thought about it that way. Like when I practice for my public speaking, I don't think I ever do a exact dry run. I never sit there and do it exactly like I would. Well, one, I don't memorize them all. I just have bullet points, but like I'll do it at like 2-3x speed just to make sure I have it all. Cause all I'm doing is like programming my brain to make sure that I never really do the, so it's basically the equivalent of visualizing it and not practicing it. So dude,
yeah, I'm a big fan of the bullet points for public speaking too. You know, trying to memorize something perfectly almost never goes well.
It comes off bad too when you. I mean, you can sound too polished for sure.
For sure, totally.
So, dude, this is awesome. Where can people find you on the interwebs if they want to?
Yeah, I live my life on LinkedIn, Jordan Benjamin. You can find me on my website, mycoreos.com. And those are probably the best places to find me. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, so give me a shout, and I'm happy to chat with anybody that's thinking about how they can perform better, how they can do it without burning out, and see what we can do to help you kick some butt.
Yeah, man. Thanks so much. This is super useful. I'm going to actually take some of this, your advice myself today.
I love it. I love it, man. Make it a great day.
Thanks, Jordan. Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. Follow Wil and the podcast on LinkedIn /Wil Klu. Visit Wil Klu ME for information on services he offers to help your cyber or tech business grow. Until next time, Synaculator.